strike zone apparently is shrinking, kind of. So
Kind of.
this was something that happened. This happened about a week ago. We talked about it a little bit, but I wanted to actually get into it here. So MLB and the umpire union agreed to shrink the buffer zone around the strike zone by an inch and a quarter. Okay. For those of you who don't know, the buffer zone is the area around the edge of the strike zone. You can go 2 inches in to call a ball, 2 inches out to call a strike, and the umpire will not be penalized on his scorecard with the union. So he won't. So if he's calling a bunch of strikes in that buffer zone off the plate, it's not going to affect his standing within the umpire union and consideration toward being put in postseason play, things like that, or postseason games. But they went from 2 inches to now it's 0.75 inches. Now, this is the thing that's interesting about that is that all this time over the last several years, we've been looking at K Zone on TV, right? We've been watching games K Zone. Umpire, almost every day I go to X to look at umpire scorecards to see, especially the games that I watched, to see how the umpires did because I'm just curious, right? But I don't think that either of those will account for the buffer zone. You just have to know it's there. However, if you're watching a game on MLB and you're watching like the StatCast, watching the pitch by pitch, right?
Yeah.
It has the buffer zone there. I assumed it was something like that, but you didn't see it anywhere else.
Right.
And so
You're talking about the game day feed?
Yes. Yeah, I wasn't entirely sure if like that's what that was, right? And I was listening to Todd Frazier talk about this last week, and he's like, "Oh, I've known about the buffer zone forever." He's like, "I got a ball way off the plate called strike three on me. I looked at the umpire. I was like, that was so far off the plate." He goes, "Sorry, Todd, it was in the buffer zone." Like, whoa, okay.
Unapologetic.
Well, kind of. He said, "Sorry, Todd."
Yeah. It doesn't sound like much of an apology. Sorry,
But
Todd, I don't have to be sorry.
So there are a couple things with this. First off, MLB didn't release anything about this. This is quiet. And they didn't even tell the players, the managers, or anybody else in MLB, despite Rob Manfred being like, "Oh yeah, we told all you guys that. We told everybody. You don't remember we talked about that? We talked about this."
Exactly.
But everybody's like, didn't hear anything about this.
Nope.
And that the way that they found out was analytics. That they are looking at how much tighter umpires are calling the zone. Catchers and pitchers are like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so that's how they were. And then they asked MLB, and they're like, "Well, yeah, we sent out a memo. Yeah, of course." And Rob Manfred's response, which was basically that, reminded me of. I actually went back and listened to our interview with Samson, where he was talking about how, because we asked him if he would sign a petition to have Rob Manfred decommissioned, and he said no, and I signed an extension. He goes, "And this is the thing you have to understand about Rob Manfred. He is a lawyer who is terrible at PR and continues to be terrible at PR."
That's exactly what he said.
That's what this is. That
he's good at negotiating,
terrible,
but he's bad at PR. Right.
Because this is bad PR. However, hold on, one more thing real quick. I was listening to FT today, Foul Territory, and they had Logan O'Hoppe on. He said, like, "Has it changed anything about the way you approach the game?" He goes, "It's changed everything about how I approach the game.
Oh, yeah.
Changed everything about the way that I frame pitches, the way I call pitches, like all of it." And so it's interesting that it seems like MLB didn't actually send out a memo so that these teams could adjust. It's kind of weird. But the positive of this whole thing, Brig, is that umpires, who players for a long time have said they're very good at their job. Like, they always preface, he was terrible tonight with, they're very good at their job. Right?
They do always preface it.
With a smaller buffer zone, they're getting balls and strikes called correct at a higher percentage than they have in at least a decade.
What?
Imagine that. You take away that buffer zone, and they tightened it up. They're better. 88.2%.
No way.
You take away that buffer zone, and umpires have been better than what they were before. They were using the buffer zone as a crutch, is what that tells me.
That's right.
They know the zone.
Say that.
They know the zone. They know it well. but they're using the
Wow.
buffer zone as a crutch and probably situationally.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think,
Dude, that's wild.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, that is crazy to me that it's gotten that much better. Any amount of better is, they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make your job harder. We're going to require you to be more precise. And they're saying, all right, watch me.
Deal.
Hold my
Yeah.
beer. Here's what you're going to see. You want to bring in robots? No, I'm way better than that. It's like,
Right.
what? I would never have
I know.
seen this coming. If you had sat me down and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make it harder on umpires to be precise. We're going to make it more difficult. And we're going to hold them to a higher level of accountability based on that. And they're going to get better. I'd be like, ugh, I don't know, man.
I don't believe
maybe
you.
Maybe in other professions that's the case, right? You apply a little pressure. Okay, we get a little better. Got it, right?
Mhm.
I would not have bought it with this. No way.
I know. Me neither. But we did see a couple nights ago, we saw an umpire. There was a play at the plate. Runner was clearly out. And I can't remember who it was, but the team... Or no, he was clearly out. They called him safe. The defense challenge is overturned, and the umpire forgot to turn his mic off.
Oh.
So he
didn't
announced
see
the
this.
call's overturned, the runner is out, and before he forgot to turn his mic off, he goes, bleep. I bleep and missed it. Bleep. And I knew it. I saw it. Into a hot mic. And so it's like,
no.
okay, like, the the vocal mistake, right? But to me, it's like the dude cares. He wants to get it right, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's the important part out of all this takeaway is like, man, he hated that he got that wrong, even though he knew what he saw. He knew the guy was out, but he still called him safe for whatever mental lapse. It happens, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting.
That is
over the last
interesting.
week and a half, we've seen a different side of umpires brought to light. That it's like, okay, like they do care, even though sometimes it seems like they just don't. I think that they have to show that, make it seem like they don't care because they don't care about the outcome of the game, and they don't care about what your manager has to say about what seems like 5 blown strike calls.
Speaking of managers who care, Mike Schilt, and he was ejected for I think the fourth, like only the third or fourth time, like this season
Ever?
or whatever. And Tatis got ejected for the first time in his whole career the other day.
Yeah, Schilt ran out there so he went out there, he tossed his pen, tossed his scorecard, and he tossed his glasses.
His
And then I
glasses,
can't remember who it was after somebody put in an injury report that said Mike Schultz says his glasses were not scratched. So whatever kind he has, whatever kind of good lenses he has, he needs some kind of endorsement from that company. Cause,
Yeah, he does.
Hey, look, I can throw my glasses in the dirt and they won't get scratched.
Yeah. Oh, and I do. Half.
Yes, absolutely. Have and will again.
Yeah, I'm sure.